Hello, everybody. Welcome to Boss Level. This is a podcast where we feature conversations with guests who have leveled up, bringing an experience boost to the table. And this is episode 0, and we are your 4 hosts. And we're here to introduce ourselves and say hello today. So would anybody like to step up first and introduce themselves?
So yes, Milady Confetti here. Hello.
Cool, I'll go next. Hi, I'm Jess Brohard.
And hi, I'm Psyche.
And I'm Hey Shady Lady. And we are your 4 lovely hosts, and we're going to be dazzling you with lots of wonderful information throughout this whole show. I guess we'll start by letting you know a little bit about each of us, and maybe we could start with how we picked our usernames and how we got into gaming. Those two may or may not go together. My story is really lame. I just needed a Tumblr username like 8 years ago. I thought Shady Lady, it rhymed, so I was like, okay, let's go. And then like gaming wise, I don't know. I've been playing since I was a child. My brother got me into Harvest Moon on the Super Nintendo when I was like 8 or 9 years old. So of course, here I am 20 plus 25, however many years later, playing Stardew Valley mostly. Farming simulators for life, I guess, for me.
For me, Milady, so my IRL name means of nobility. So that's where Milady comes from.
Ooh,
and then
love
Confetti is an old track name. And when I combine the two, they also happen to rhyme. So I said, this is a great name to go with. So that's what I went with. It doesn't really have anything to do with gaming in particular. I've been gaming since I was little. I grew up on a Sega Genesis. I went from a Sega Genesis to a PlayStation 2 in high school, which is so I didn't grow up with like all the systems, but like I just was an only child and needed something to do. So that's pretty much all I did. I was just like, yeah, like I'm going to get new games on my Sega Genesis. And people were like, I'm literally have a Dreamcast. I'm like, what's a Dreamcast? I don't know what that is. But yeah, so I've been into gaming, and when I graduated college, I dove into content creation and really found my niche in the horror sphere. But I also do a lot of other things like Animal Crossing and trying to revolt against Tom Nook. We're close. We're close.
That's
We're
like a
getting there.
lifelong goal right there. So yeah, my name is Psyche, and I'm really silly because I picked this was my name when I was a kid. I picked it because I really liked the Greek myth of Psyche. And then I picked a username online that was something completely unrelated that nobody could pronounce. And I was like, I'll go back to Psyche. And still people call me Psych all the time. So I kind of gave up on that. I think it's just a curse that your name is always going to be hard to pronounce on the internet. That's just how it works. And I started gaming when I was really little. I played Duck Hunt, and I 100% cheated at it because I figured out that you could put the light gun up against the TV and then you never missed the ducks, and that did not translate well into future gaming. So I clearly ruined my future in FPS gaming by thinking I was going to be like super skillful because I cheated at Duck Hunt as a 5-year-old.
And then I guess that leaves me, and I don't have a obviously username. I kind of surprises people when I tell them this, but Brohard is actually my real legal last name, and that was just like a funny coincidence. I mean, technically my parents named me Jessica, and then I had the creativity and foresight to chop off the end and go by Jess.
Okay.
So not a super creative person, I suppose, but it's just funny that I got lucky with, not really got lucky, but I wonder looking back now how much influence my name had on like the way I acted when I grew up and like what I decided to do. Like, yeah, Brohard, it just seems like such a video game thing. So TLDR, I got lucky. And then I had a similar first game as you, Psyche, actually. I think Duck Hunt was my very first game, but I didn't figure out that cheat. I was just like, why can't I win? I don't know. I just had
I was just a terrible child. That's really the reason.
I didn't understand the game. I think I also didn't, I don't know. I was not a very smart child. I grew out of that though. So, and then these days I play primarily FPSs, I would say. Like I'm kind of a COD fanatic, but I also I'll play anything. I also really, really like roguelikes. I love indie games. I love farming simulators. I'm sure I don't have nearly as many hours into like Harvest Moon and Animal Crossing as some of the others, but I like little sims, little management games. I'll play whatever.
You want to join my Tom Nook rebellion?
Yes, I'm already
volunteer.
It's interesting. I have probably like 500 to 700 hours in Stardew at this point, and I have it all across my cell phone, my Nintendo Switch, and PC. And I'm like hyper modded. I run a modded save file with like 200 plus mods on it. But I actually have like 2,000 hours in Overwatch, so I have more hours in Overwatch than my farming simulators. But I think that speaks to the addictive nature of something like Overwatch and how it's so hard to put that game down. I did though. I've removed the addiction. I am no longer an Overwatch addict. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't think that I was going to get into FPS. I remember when Halo came out when I was in high school and everyone was playing it, and I tried to play it on the controller, the joypad or whatever, and my character would just run in, and I could not, for the life of me, my brain could not wrap around so my character would just run in, the gun would go straight to the ceiling, and then I would swing back to the floor. I could not figure it out. So when I got the point and click from the computer, I was like, oh, just click heads, got it, easy.
Yeah, that's such a big difference, isn't it? And that can lead you to believe, like you did, you think that you're not an FPS person, and then you try mouse and keyboard gaming, and you're like,
yeah, there's some people who seem to be able to do one or the other. Like, I cannot do it with a controller. I just can't. I don't know what it is. It's
I can play
weird.
other games with a controller. Like if I'm playing like a platformer, you have to use the controller. But like I can't really play a shooter with a controller.
My brain just can't translate it.
Yeah,
hides and she can do both.
Oh my gosh.
It was because I like played Modern Warfare with my brother, who he was the first person to introduce me to like FPS, and yeah, when I started playing that, and then later on, I actually had stopped because like the Call of Duty seems a little like much for me, and I was just like, okay, let me move on. But then when I came back to shooters, it was actually Destiny, and Destiny was only on console, so I just had to learn how to do that. And I had so much fun, and then now I play Destiny like on both my PlayStation and my PC. Why did I sign up for that? I don't know.
You're like ambidextrous. That's crazy. You can just like go back and forth.
Yeah, I think it's also because of Dead by Daylight, because I played on PC with a PlayStation controller just for comfort purposes, but now I play with mouse and keyboard. So I think it's just that game kind of helped me train to go back and forth just to get used to it. But yeah, it's definitely an adjustment. Like with Destiny, I do feel more comfortable in a PlayStation controller than I do a mouse and keyboard, but I can manage both.
It's a good skill to have, to be fair.
So, if y'all could have the powers of one character in a video game, what would they be? Who would they be? Why?
That's
really hard.
I know.
It is a hard one.
I don't know how to answer this.
I actually do. I have an answer to this. Okay. I looked ahead because I saw that it was a hard question. I was like, better think. I would pick the power to. Did you guys play Braid? It was
I haven't, but I haven't played
it. Game. I don't remember the details, but you could rewind and fast forward time, but like only to a specific amount. You couldn't just like rewind forever. You could only, and I don't remember how it worked, if there was like a specific amount of time or a specific event or whatever. So you could rewind temporarily. I would love to have that IRL. So like when you like say the wrong thing or you like trip over something and fall, I'll just rewind a couple minutes and try that again.
That's sort of like Life is Strange, like the Life is Strange power.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't.
But I also immediately think of Butterfly Effect, and I also just recently watched like the Marvel movies. I've been trying to catch up with like Marvel stuff, so I watched like Endgame and Infinity Wars and whatever. So it's just this whole debate of like time and like would that mess anything up? Would this change the future? Would it cause, if you went back to fix your like little blip of speech, but then that somehow caused like someone you care about to get into a car wreck or something, like the butterfly effect, like extrapolation. Like but I was gonna say I don't have like a video game character, but the first thing that came to my mind was, I believe it was Goldo from the Dragon Ball Z, from the Frieza saga. There was a little group of them, but his power was holding his breath. I think it was Goldo. He was a little green guy, and he could stop time for as long as he was holding his breath. I thought that was, I've always wanted that power.
So similar. You would still manipulate time.
Yeah, that's always the first thing I think of is manipulating time. It's just like pausing it for a second. It's not like going back to change anything. It's just like, let me pause this, and you know, better. I bet you're wondering how I got in this situation. Just kidding. I'm out.
Record scratch.
It's funny that you both mentioned time, because the first thing I thought of was Life is Strange. I haven't actually played Life is Strange all the way through, but I did play like the first chapter a long time ago. And the first thing I thought was, oh, I messed that up. I'm going to just rewind to that exact point for that exact thing and fix it. And that was literally the first thing I thought of.
That's like when you're playing like an emulator game and you have like save states.
Yes.
And you can just anytime just save and then reload, like quick load.
That is the only reason I could make it through Donkey Kong. I tried to replay that recently and I was like, what is this? How did I beat this as a child? What?
Some of those older games are hard. Like
impossible.
The Toy Story game that came out, I think it came out on the Genesis and on the Super Nintendo, and the Lion King game that came
Lion
out.
King is a nightmare.
Oh, the Lion King. Oh, that game.
Yeah.
Millie,
has like
you
flashbacks
mentioned
of that game.
I do.
the Sega. The only game I remember playing on Sega was a Pocahontas game, and I just remember it being really impossible. And like,
I did have that one too. Yeah, I think the first one I played was Paperboy because that was my mom's favorite game growing up. So she gave it to me, and then like it in turn became my favorite game, and I was like, oh okay, like I like this. Or Animaniacs was also on the Sega Genesis. I absolutely love that show, and I love that game. Honestly, I think for a superpower for this, and it's not just because like the movie came out and also I'm wearing the shirt and I'm also like a diehard Spider-Man fan, but it would be Spider-Man. I don't know if anybody played that on the PlayStation 2.
Yes.
I played the one on the PlayStation 1, I think.
I think it one was for the PlayStation and the other one was for the PlayStation 2, the sequel.
Oh, okay. I missed
the ones that followed the first two.
But it was the
movies,
one where you could like, so you know how like the one that came out for the PlayStation 4, like you could swing all through New York. So it was the second one where you could do all of that, and then the third one came out and it was like, oh, you can only like go down the street. And I'm like, no, I want to swing through New York. I would say that what I had probably an obscene amount of hours into that game. But yeah, so I would go with Spider-Man, honestly, to have
awesome.
The powers of the spider, but also like Peter's just awesome. So
oh my god, yeah.
Agreed.
I'm like I've only just now recently been watching like the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies, and I was just like, oh my god, swoon all over again. Like,
delight.
He's adorable.
It's ridiculous.
It's interesting though. I also watched the animated one where Miles Morales is the Spider-Man, and I'm just I don't know. I loved Spider-Man in high school because it was one of the first like superhero movies that started coming out, and I kind of fell out of it. And I guess like I thought Spider-Man was kind of boring after you got all these other superheroes coming out. But now that all of them are out and I've watched all of them, I'm circling back around. I'm like, no, he's still just my favorite. He's just a little
he's
nerd.
Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
He's just a little nerd that's up here with all these like gods and stuff. Like, he's a cool
doing
little kid.
his best.
Yeah.
But I will say in the comics, he does grow up. So that's where, because the thing is there's multiple like Spider-Mans and stuff like that who take up the reign, not just Peter. There's Miles and like other forms of like there's other Spider-Mans as well, because Peter can't live forever.
Unfortunately.
He doesn't die. They would never do that. But yeah. Also comic book nerd, sorry.
I love that though.
Never apologize for that.
That's like when I got my mind blown when I realized there were more than one Robin and Batman and Robin. I was just like,
yeah. The Bat family. Oh, you.
Yep. That's a whole
they have a lot going on
thing.
with them. You want to talk about dysfunction?
So this is the Boss Level podcast. So a good question for us to answer is, what does it mean to you to be boss level? I can kind of like riff on this for a second because I feel like it's been in the last like couple of months. I've been doing streaming and stuff since 2016. And I have been amateur hour like the whole time. In a lot of ways, I'm still amateur hour. But I feel like over the last year or so, I've started taking myself more seriously. I realized that I would give more respect to my manager at a fast food place or a retail place than I would give to myself when it comes to like running my own small business, which is what we are doing as content creators.
Yes.
And so it's easy for me to call out of work when I'm working for myself. It's easy for me to be late. It's easy for me to like, I can just make whatever, no one cares. It's just, I can stream tomorrow, la la la. Like, and I feel like when I started respecting myself more as a boss of myself, like, and when I say I'm going to be there, I'm going to be there. When I say I'm going live kind of thing. This kind of mindset shift I've had this year of respecting myself more, respecting myself the same way that I respect these jobs that pay me minimum wage, you know, and things feel like they really have truly been shifting. The phrase level up has kind of been just like floating around me for like the last like 6 or 7 months. So when I started having the conversation about coming onto this podcast and I heard the name was Boss Level, I was like, this is destiny. Like it's meant to be. But yeah, it's for me, it's been a lot of like taking myself more seriously and doing what I've said that I've wanted to do for, you know, almost 6 years now. But instead of seeing it as a hobby, I see it as an actual career and treating it that way.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
absolutely.
cool. That's a great answer.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you.
I think for me, is not that, I do have like a lot of similarities to you, Shady Lady, but I think also like for me in my lane is like not dimming my light anymore. I used to always make myself smaller because I thought that was the acceptable thing to do in the content creation space. And, with so many like intersecting identities and stuff like that. And I was just like, honestly, no more. Like I'm not going to break myself down into little bits and pieces to make myself more tangible or more acceptable for other people. You take me as a whole or you don't get me at all. So that's one thing that I have been doing unapologetically. It's sometimes I feel like bad. It's just like, why did it take me so long to get there? But the thing is, I just had to accept and understand that journey of me getting there and getting to that level of acceptance and then just walking in that truth. Because if I didn't have those trials and tribulations, I wouldn't be the person I am today. So honestly, being unapologetic in every step that I take and never dimming my light for anyone or anything at all. And being like, that's on period.
Yes. I would like to continue that because literally that was the thing I was thinking as well, is that up until like, I think it was last year, I had always had this like mindset that I had to be acceptable to everyone. I had to make myself acceptable and I had to shrink myself down to fit like a space that was already there instead of carving out a space for myself. And once I stopped doing that, I've genuinely never been happier in content creation. So like for me, boss level means being you and bringing the best of yourself, and that there is enough space for us, regardless of whether we don't fit the mold that other people have made for us. And for me, it was the fact that I started being a lot more open about, for example, my sexuality and allowing that to be a part of my content and allowing that to be a part of what my community and my audience were involved in. Like we got to have these discussions, we got to talk about these things, we got to celebrate these things. Whereas before I would have been a lot more quiet because like I felt like, oh, I'm not going to please everybody by doing that. And I've just decided, no, not anymore. Thank you. I'm done with that.
Isn't it liberating?
Yes, so
It's
liberating.
so liberating.
It's amazing.
That's great because like I was gonna say something pretty similar, and it sounds like I'm just like stealing y'all's answers, but
No.
like truly, it was a hard lesson for me to realize that like other people's opinions of me is none of my business, and I have to live my life and create my content and do whatever I'm gonna do for me, not for anyone else or for what I think they want to see out of me. Because like a boss does not care what you think of them. A boss just is and is a boss, But I think to me, boss level also means, when I am ready to, being able to kind of evolve and get bigger and get better in whatever capacity I want to, because like you can beat the final boss of the video game and there's going to be DLC, there's going to be sequels, there's going to be other bosses, there's going to be the same boss reincarnated. So I would like to, be that boss and know that even if I'm being the best me I can be, another chapter can begin and another level can start or something.
Yeah. Leaving up that opportunity for growth, because if you stop growing, then you stagnate out. So
yes, exactly. Yeah. And not just like, obviously I'm sure you didn't mean it just like growing, on social media or whatever, but like growing as a person and developing as a person, because, none of us is perfect and,
So, except for Tom Holland, but yeah.
Except for Tom Holland, he is the one perfect person.
He really is, though. That I swear.
This is just
name one thing you
umbrella
can't do.
performance.
This is just
goodness.
the Tom Holland Simp podcast now. So what is it that got you started on your path towards becoming more of a boss character, of a boss level person?
I'm going to jump in with this one. I did not start in content creation. I did a really stupid thing that just happened to work out. I decided that at 18, as soon as I got out of school, I was going to work in the games industry. And I was this very young, very foolish person who just went, be really cool to be a game master for a games company, wouldn't it? And I saw this like job and I applied for it, and it was like halfway across the country. Now, hi, I'm from Ireland, so everyone else here is not. Ireland is very small. I'm aware that this is going to sound like not a big deal to everybody else, but I moved 200 miles away from home. It was the first time I'd moved out of my parents' house. And I just went, I'm going to go across the country and I'm going to work for the games industry. And it was terrifying, but I did it. And I lived in a tiny, tiny little apartment working as a game master for a game called Warhammer Age of Reckoning, which doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. Unfortunately, because it was great. But and yeah, that was my start in the journey. And from there, I've gone through being in customer support, being in community management, and project management. Did a little tiny stint in recruitment in the games industry. And then I went, okay, I'm going to try streaming now, and sort of did that and ended up here somehow. And like, yeah, it was a weird journey. I'm back in Northern Ireland now, so back the 200 miles back up north. And yeah, it's odd. Hi.
I mean, I had kind of a similar experience of like moving, you know, far away from home and then basically coming back because like since I've been freelance my entire career. So I didn't know, I grew up knowing I wanted to work in video games, but it wasn't until my senior year in college that I decided that I wanted to be a host. And so I started a YouTube channel and like taught myself how to host with this terrible production quality, kind of gaming news segment just on my own little like YouTube channel. And I never wanted to like really, it's funny because I didn't start off thinking that I would be any sort of like content creator. I was like creating content. This was back in 2011. Yeah. And I think people didn't really use, like there were YouTubers, but like Twitch wasn't mainstream yet. So we didn't really use the term content creator. So I was creating content, not with the intention to create content, but with the intention of getting hired to host other people's content. And basically, long story short, it's kind of what I did. I like worked my way up and ended up just freelance hosting for a number of years. And then like one thing that happens if you're a host or a caster is you just kind of also stream and create content on the side. I feel like the waters just get muddied. So you get to do everything, which is nice. Cause like, you know, Psyche, you mentioned like doing a lot of different things. And I feel like that's kind of how everyone that I know that works in gaming and esports and all that has had like a completely different journey than they were expecting. And there were always like twists and turns that they weren't really expecting or anticipating or like planning for, but that's kind of the way it goes sometimes. That's just like life, right?
Yeah.
For me, so I'm all the way out in left field. So I actually started in higher education. I started out as an athletic training major. Because I was like, oh, like I'm good at sports and, you know, science is good and I'm really good at math. I said that out loud. And
look, I was a mathlete. All right.
So I did that. And then I realized I just, you know, it's just my mind just wasn't in it. My heart wasn't in it. Like, you know, of course I paid attention to my athletes and stuff like that, but just like my mind just kept veering off. So I actually did a radical change and went to, I don't know. I went into writing arts because like I've always liked writing. And then I kept my psychology major and then I had like a bunch of concentrations, women and gender studies, ethics. And I forget some other thing that I had. And so I did all that. And then I went into working in banking. And then I was like, wow, the real world sucks. So then I went and got my master's degree in higher education administration with a concentration in counseling. And then I went and moved to LA. So I went from the East Coast to Hollywood, where I worked for a film school, which was really cool to get an aspect of the industry. And that's when I started like streaming because I just needed something to do. Like I didn't have any like family. I had family out in LA, but I didn't have like any friends and stuff like that. And Hollywood is very different. And like East Coast, West Coast culture is also very, very different. So I just had a hard time adjusting. So like turned to streaming and really got into that. I think my introduction was through like the 1000 Dreams Fund and like just saw how big that this could get. And I moved from LA back home. So that's seems to be
that's the thing we do apparently.
But I just kept pouring my heart into my content. Like I would have, jobs here and there. Like I was still working in higher education full time, but it's like my heart just kept pulling toward content creation. It's like I think the universe is trying to tell me that this is where I'm supposed to be. But like something in me, because of I think just how I was raised, it's like, You got to go to college, get the degree, get the job. Because, you know, freelance work isn't guaranteed. How are you going to get healthcare? Because I also skateboard. So if you break your arm, what are you going to do? And how are you going to get that repaired? So I haven't actually ever broke my arm, but I have gotten rocked a little bit. So, you know, with that like mindset, like I always just resisted, but then it's like something's always pulling me to this thing. So I said, you know what? This is what I'm going to focus on. And I believe it's been going really well, but I'm the type of person, I always want to be like outdoing myself. I always want to, like, if I've done something or some type of production, like my mind is like, how can I make this 10 times better? How can I make this 100 times better? Like, it's always something I have to push myself past my limit. As an All Might. Oh no, I'm sorry. Yami from Black Clover. Push myself past my limit because I really believe in what I do. I believe in the craft. I fell in love with the craft of content creation. I fell in love with the craft of hosting. I fell in love with just the craft of being creative. And since that was an outlet I had growing up, I feel like this is just where I'm supposed to be. So that's how I just kept coming back to this lane. And I'm happy here.
It's interesting that we all have this like similar narrative of like starting at home, moving away. When I was like 18, y'all all got started a lot younger than I did, though. It sounds though like me and my lady Confetti might have like bounced around a bit, though, the same way. When I was 18, I moved 300 miles away from where I grew up with my family, and to move in with a bunch of friends that I met from anime conventions and stuff. So I was kind of a loser throughout like school up until high school, when I decided to become like alternative and whatever, and I didn't care about what people thought about me anymore. I was like loud and wild and crazy. And I was a thespian in theater. I was in art, but my teachers all were not very kind to me. I had a lot of undiagnosed mental health issues. First of all, ADHD, bipolar, depression, anxiety being all of them. But teachers didn't really know how to deal with me, and a lot of people like me, and I still think that not very well today. So I was constantly getting in school suspension or being kicked out of class, or so by the end, and I did anime art. So my art teacher didn't like anime. He liked traditional art. And so I would get failed on a lot of my projects because he didn't like my art style. So I was kind of bullied out of doing art for like 5 or 6 years after that, because I was just, I was wearing my own clothes to school that I had made, and then I would get in school suspension because they were against dress code kind of thing. So everything that I was showing that was like natural, if I would see a child, I was like 15, 16 years old doing this, a child doing that, that's to celebrate. That's, oh, you're showing an interest in fashion design and art. We need to put you more on this path instead of punishing them for doing it. So I got it like beat out of me, and I didn't do it for 5 or 6 years. I moved 300 miles away to live with a bunch of friends, became a bit of a party girl for a while, because I was finally felt popular. And so I like pursued a party lifestyle. And when I look back on it now, we had like, I lived in a show where we did like punk shows out of the basement. So we would have like rotating bands coming through. We had like some pretty interesting bands that came through as well. But when I look back at that now, that was hosting. Like I would have sometimes up to 150, 200 people in the house. And it was like me and 4 or 5 other people lived like ran the house. We'll say it that way. It was definitely a house show house. And, you didn't really want to live there, but you loved to come party there kind of thing. And, but when I look back on it, it's like, we got to make sure that everything's stocked. I got to make sure everyone's entertained. I got to go around, talk to everybody. And when I look at what I do online with streaming, that was such an interesting precursor to it, and like building me up to it. And of course, throughout there, I was doing full-time office work as a data entry clerk. So I was like desk job. It was a 9 to 5, but it was third shift. So this is why I'm a poor little nocturnal person now, and I can't break the habit. But I, real world sucks, soul sucking desk job, hated my life, moved back home with my family. And then I felt like a complete failure because I was 25, 26, went through a traumatic heartbreak that wrecked a lot of my self-esteem. I moved 300 miles away from all of my friends, had nobody anymore, didn't know what I was doing, chopped all my hair off. It was like it was a whole thing. I had a whole like dark night of the soul, spiritual awakening moment. And then I started streaming. My friend had given me his Blue Yeti microphone, like a hand-me-down. and I had a little rinky-dink computer setup that was the last thing I bought with that like big boy job that I used to have. And I went into like I was working sometimes up to 3 part-time jobs of just making ends meet with, you know, whatever movie theater job I can get kind of thing while I was doing streaming. And I think it took me 2 years before I accepted the future possibility of content creation as a career, because I did want it to. I'd always wanted to do YouTube since YouTube was even a phrase to me, and even back in like MySpace days, like I wanted to be MySpace famous kind of thing, but I wanted it to be for something worthwhile and not just. This is why I've never wanted like viral popularity. I don't just want to blow up for some random thing and everybody knows who I am, but they're all like, they all hate me, you know what I mean? Like I wanted it to be valuable. I wanted to be well loved and liked for what I was doing, which is I think why I went into like educational content, trying to like inspire and encourage other people to pursue their dreams. And also probably because I was failed so much by adults when I was a teenager that I really wish to play that role for people who are, you know, not feeling inspired and not having their hand held while they're trying to go on a kind of scary, unpredictable path of being an artist as you're living, you know?
Yeah.
I'm really glad that you mentioned like how you were like, we had all these people over and then I realized what I was doing was hosting, because like people sometimes ask me, they'll come to me for like advice. They'll be like, hey, like I stream a lot, but I want to do more like hosting. How do I do that? And I'm like, well, like you kind of already are. When you're streaming and you're like talking to your audience, you're basically hosting that broadcast. Like, yeah, it might be on a different scale or a different kind of production than like some of the stuff that you could be doing in your future, but like you're already hosting, you know?
Yeah.
That's actually something that came up a lot when I worked in recruitment in the games industry. Blah, 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 blah. Words are hard. But people would ask me all the time, like, be like, oh, well, you know, I have no job experience. I've never worked in the games industry before. I've never even really had like an office job, a real job or whatever. How do I get experience to do community work, or how do I get experience to do anything? If you're streaming, you're running a community. If you are even like a guild leader in World of Warcraft or in Final Fantasy 14 or whatever, you are essentially a community manager to a degree. That kind of experience is the stuff you can draw on, and as long as you can talk on it and like when you're in an interview explain what skills you've developed, that's still you're exercising different muscles is the wrong word, but you know what I mean, that are the kind of things you'll be using in a community management job, for example.
I think what I used to do that a lot with my students, particularly my RAs, because we just had more one-on-one time versus like, you know, overseeing a building. But yeah, we talk a lot about transferable skills. And,
great,
you know, sometimes when it goes from industry to industry, the verbiage may change or like what the thing is called may change, but the skills at their core are the same. So it's identifying what those particular things are and drawing them out. And how do you transfer that into written language? How do you translate that into interview so you can speak through the experience, you know, through the STAR method is what, you know, most people talk about, you know, talk about your experience, the thing that you took away from it and how you would improve, or metrics or things to make that thing better and how that could apply to what you're currently doing. So it is, but the thing is like, I think with the American education system, sometimes we don't think to teach like that or think to express ourselves that way. So it's kind of like pulling out the nitty gritty, or that's where like a lot of mentorship comes through. And I'm just like, okay, this is what you're doing. Okay. You were the assistant for Angelina Jolie, or you were, you know, on TMZ, which was two of my RAs actually did do that. Okay. So this is what we're doing. You know, the incident that happened with Kanye at the TMZ headquarters. You know, one of my students was there and I was like, okay, so you dealt with crisis management. You know, you dealt with somebody who was an unruly client in a situation. So how did you handle that? What are the things that you had to activate? They were like, well, I did a lot of my things that you taught us in RA training. See how they're similar? So now how can we apply this to the thing that you're doing? And now they work at Netflix. And I'm like, okay, you got that.
That's really cool.
I'm not taking credit for that, but like, because they had the skill, but like, you know, it's just like between the different like industries, like how do you communicate?
You're totally right though. It's transferable skills. It's knowing how to essentially, it's the thing is, I think people don't realize they use the skills. It's more about, like you said, being able to put it into words and explain it to somebody else, what you did and how it's relevant to the other thing. Because you were already going to do it. It's just being able to tell somebody that.
Exactly. I think this is a lot of times like in job interviews when they'll ask us like, what's a time in your past job where you messed up and you had to fix it, and how did that go for you? Because they want to see how you can apply that to their workspace. So maybe we could also like jump into that too. Are there any like super big failures you've had that you've learned from and can apply going forward with what you're doing now, or maybe would be good lessons for other people to hear?
I feel like I would like to jump in because I feel like I have had a lot of failures, and I feel like, like more so than talking specifics as far as like, oh, here's a failure I had and here's what I learned. I think the most important thing that I've learned is that you will fail, and it's not like you just kind of have to keep trucking, because you're not going to have there's no person on earth who is ever like, everybody fails. It's just a fact of life. And as much as it can suck, you do kind of have to like pick yourself up and dust yourself off and just kind of keep on trucking. And I am always like a big fan of people who do talk about their failures, because so often social media is so obsessed with these wins. And while I think it's great to celebrate wins, I think it's important to talk about failures, because to not talk about them is almost to ignore them and kind of to pretend they don't exist. And like right now I'm kind of on like a little social media break. I realized that the things that I was looking at online were not making me feel good about myself or my content or anything that I was doing. So I deleted Twitter off of my phone, and my mental health has been like so much better.
You're so powerful. Oh my God.
What?
Week or two.
So necessary.
Well, because that's like the thing is like gosh, it was like anytime I would see like my Twitter follower count going down or anything like that, I saw that as a failure. And like I really had to like break that and be like, no, it doesn't matter. I can't define myself that way. And like, it was difficult because the other thing is I just feel like there's so much pressure, particularly on like those of us who kind of do what we do, to stay relevant. And if you're not growing, you're stagnating. And if you're stagnating, you're failing. And it's just like it's just a lot to wrap your head around. So like the other thing I've really, really learned from my failures is that just because like you have to learn also what you want versus what you need. This is something this is directly from my therapist because I always have
thanks for the free therapy I'm here for. Let's go.
You're welcome. Anytime I have a failure of any scale, I always blow them up to these huge things. Anytime I have a failure, I always run right to my therapist, and she basically always asks me, well, like if it's an opportunity that I missed out on, she's like, well, did you want that opportunity or did you need it? And I go, oh my God, you're right. Like, I didn't need that. I just
One
thought
second, I'm
I
just
wanted
gonna take
it.
some notes for later.
It was a hard lesson to learn, but what I want is not always what I need.
Social media is very difficult for me to. I'm like an extremely sensitive person. I'm extremely self-conscious. I'm extremely down on myself. I compare myself to other people like there's no end. And it especially sucks when I do that to peers and people who are my friends, because it grows a bitterness for me for those people. And it's absolutely not fair to them for that to be growing. I actually haven't logged in. I've logged in. I'll like pull up. I've stopped scrolling through Twitter. That's been the best that I could do for now. And it's Twitter, it's Instagram, it's Twitch, it's all of them. It's scrolling through and seeing other people, because what I see, and I think a lot of people see this, like someone's like, oh my God, we just had a great stream. I got 100 gifted subs today and la la la. And then I'm thinking to myself, why didn't I get 100 gift subs? Why? Or I'm feeling bad. Well, I didn't stream today. I could have gotten that. And then I feel bad because I didn't work that day, or I didn't, I am on a social media break too right now. I've been for a couple of weeks because I've hit like a pretty hard winter depression. And I feel like I'm constantly going through a burnout cycle. I still haven't found the right recipe or the right formula to make this work. And so I'll be able to go really hard for 3 to 6 months. And then I just get slapped in the face and I feel like such a miserable like wretch for like sometimes a couple weeks, sometimes a couple of months. I think the longest break I ever took was like 8 or 9 months. And that was the hardest one to come back from. But it's also because it's social media, it's our personalities. It's not just a job that I can log out of and clock out from and go home. It's 24/7. The quote, I quit my 9 to 5 to work 24/7, never hit me harder than any other quote I've ever heard. That's like,
that's real.
And it's exhausting constantly doing it, but it's also exhilarating. And I couldn't imagine doing anything else, but it's a constant battle of balance. And I think life in general is, but especially when you're throwing in sharing your passion, turning your passion into your work. It's so difficult.
I'm really glad you brought up burnout, because actually I think that's my biggest failure. I'm going to give you my biggest failure, which is burnout, and I'll explain that. But I'm also going to tell you a really funny mistake that I made that is technically a pretty big failure when I worked in recruitment, because I think it's hilarious now. Everyone thought I had my shit together. What they don't know is that there was one day that we flew a client over, or not client, an interview candidate over from very, very far away. And they were invited over for an interview. And they arrived at the office and they looked me in the face and they said, okay, so what hotel am I staying in? And I realized I hadn't booked a hotel for them to stay in. And that was my responsibility solely.
Yeah.
And I looked them in the face and went, I'll just go check for you, and ran and immediately started calling every hotel in the city. And I like the fear in my heart, I cannot describe. And that was the biggest mistake I've ever made.
I'll just be like,
I think it's
look,
very funny now.
You can sleep on my couch. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I was like, you can have my apartment. It's fine. It's got
We'll clear out one of
you
these
can have the
offices
whole
in the
thing.
back.
I'll sleep under the bed. It's okay. But like the fear, and everyone was like, so wait, which hotel? And I was like, I'm just checking right now. If you could just wait for a second. I got it sorted.
Oh my
but like
gosh.
that was the probably the biggest silly mistake that I've ever made, because I had been on top of everything, and then I just completely slipped my mind. Like, this person flew over from Russia, and I was just like, oh yeah, hotel. I booked the flight. I'm sure I booked anyway. But on the topic of burnout, I hit a wall because I took my job very personally when I worked in the games industry from the other side. I don't know what it was, but we had this whole mentality of like the player comes first all the time. And I took that like super to heart. It meant that I worked really, really long hours. I was constantly working at home when I got home from the office, and I hit a very emotional burnout, and I had to move back home. And that is where I ended up here. I'd been streaming and I was doing it as like a hobby thing. I started full-time streaming, not because I could, because I was not a successful streamer at the time. I did it because I left my job and I moved back home to be closer to family because I hit burnout. And that is something that I think even now I'm constantly battling, is trying to get the work-life balance right, which I thought would be easier working for yourself, and it absolutely isn't. I think it's that facet of it is so much harder, because you have to, essentially you're just saying no to yourself, and like there's no reason for me not to keep working. I want to. I enjoy it. I may as well keep going. But then when you tire yourself out, what are you going to do then? Like, you've been working literally 24/7, like you were saying. So it's one of those things that we just have to get really good at balancing. And I haven't hit that balance yet, but I'm slowly getting better at it, I guess.
I don't know if I ever will, to be honest. Like, I feel like I figure one thing out and then I've rebounded on something else. Like, I've fallen back on something else. And it's just a constant tug and pull. What's that game called?
Mm-hmm.
Tug of war. Tug of war. Yeah.
Tug and pull is something else. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know.
Yeah, one of my
think
biggest failures, gulp,
Okay.
tug and pull. So on an opposite spectrum, what are your favorite moments from your career instead of failures you might have had? I feel like my favorite moments are celebrating with my community. Like whenever I've had like really fun like birthday streams or things like that, like those are always the most memorable moments for me. And anytime I receive any kind of feedback from someone that I've helped them through something, or I've inspired them, or you know, they feel more empowered to do something because of a piece of content I've made or something I've said, like those always stand out to me. There's not like a specific moment I could point to. My 2017 birthday party on stream was pretty phenomenal, specifically only because that one just stands out to me. I guess from there on out, maybe it's also like 2017 would have been what, almost 5 years ago. It was before I turned 30. So it's just like, maybe now I don't want to remember any of my birthdays anymore, but yeah, I don't know. It's the celebrating with the community. It's the community aspect and the building bonds with other people and feeling like I'm making a difference and I serve like a larger purpose than just the little silly me sitting in my room playing video games, you know?
I think for me, I'll piggyback off the failure since I didn't speak for
Oh,
that
my
one.
bad, sorry.
No, you're fine. I think for me, I think it's like, I'm the type of person, I really like to stay very real with myself. Like, I don't ever think that I'm not going to mess up something. I mess up something every single day. I think for a lot, like with social media, I would like get, caught up too in the numbers thing. I wouldn't necessarily like compete with other people, or I wouldn't see somebody else winning as like a detriment to me. Because that's just, I don't view things as like, if I'm in competition with myself. So I'm always like, okay,
That's
I did this thing.
interesting.
So that's always how I do. Cause I don't know, we do this thing in higher education called Clifton Strengths, and like my second strength. So you get like, it's a range of, I think, like 28 strengths, and everybody has all of them. It's the top 5 that like typically shine the most. And my second one is competitiveness, but my competitiveness is always, it's internally faced. Like I ran track, so like it's a very individual sport. So like, even if like my teammate does great at the shot put, like my competition is on the 100-meter dash. So it's like, how can I always outdo my time? So I focus on like that lane. I think sometimes I just get too caught up on that, and I put a lot of pressure on myself. And one thing that helps me with that is actually my mom a lot. She will just sit me down because she notices, like, even if I'm not around here, she's like, "You're getting in your head again, aren't you?"
Aw.
I'm like, "I haven't even spoken to you in 2 weeks." She was like,
Mommy.
I know. She's like, I can sense it. There's something, I don't know. She's like, "Get out of your head." Or, I would get caught up in things like the numbers, or like, why can't I like do this one thing or whatever? And she was just like, stop putting pressure on yourself. Like it always goes back to that same thing. So it's kind of like trying to not necessarily break the mentality, because I don't see like my internal competitives as possibly a negative thing, but also just finding the balance of what that is and how can I put that out. But I always like to remind people, like on social media, because people see my cosplays and, things that I do and stuff like that. I always like to remind people to not put me on a pedestal, because I am very much human. And being on a pedestal is very dangerous, because I'm like, you're putting me, I like the way that, I think it was Mr. Rogers, but he's like, don't put me on a pedestal, because you're making it seem like it's something that you can achieve yourself.
Yeah.
So the thing is, it's like anything that I do, you can do, I don't know what the level of work ethic is, not going to look exactly like me, but like if you have a goal that you want to aspire to, I wouldn't say, put people that you admire on some type of a pedestal and make them unachievable, or I don't.
Well, because it
I don't-
also
for
makes
lack of a
us-
better word, like godlike, because it's very odd one for me, because it's just like, oh, like you're this, that, and the fourth, and I'm like, I literally forgot to put on underwear yesterday. So listen, get better. Tom Holland is out there.
Yeah, we can put Tom Holland on a pedestal.
It's also that like
agree.
once they put us
Like-
up on that pedestal, though, it's a lot easier
Yeah.
to like demonize us if we do mess up, or it makes them want to. I don't want to say them want to, but I see it happen so often with influencers that get put up there, and then they make one little tiny mistake, and then they're just like berated and like metaphorically beat to death over like a small like little mess up. And of course there's like accountability on larger issues. I'm talking about someone that just like makes a misstep, and it really shouldn't be this big of a career breaker, but because they've been held to such a high standard, which isn't really, because that high standard is also, like you said, it's making people feel like they can't attain it or achieve it in the same way. And it's a very toxic, I don't know, it's a toxic culture that
It's very
stresses me out.
parasocial too, and I always remind people parasocial.
Yeah.
So like my streamer and content creator life and my personal life are very separate, and I do that intentionally. It's not the fact that I don't want to seem relatable, or I don't want people to think I'm closed off. But the thing is, it's a mental health thing.
Yeah.
It's a health thing, but it's also a health for my end, but also my community's end, because I don't think that you need to have access to all the things that I do all the time. I don't believe it. But the thing is, for some communities and some community leaders, that works for them. I'm not going to, judge anybody's, step or what they do. I just know for me personally, and for boundaries for me, that parasocial, we need to keep it parasocial. There are some people in my community, obviously, like, we found out we had a lot more in common. Like we actually, became friends over time. And it's just like, oh my God, like, somebody from my community member, Diehard Diva, who is an also amazing cosplay, like we became like really good friends. Like I stayed the night at her house and met her cats. So it's like, you know what I mean?
Wholesome.
So sometimes those things just happen and happen to happen. And that's amazing when it does, but it's not all the time. But like, I really like to emphasize parasocial.
I find
that's
it
just for me.
interesting that like I imagine, like when you said that you were like a competitive athlete, like I would immediately think that you would be more comparing or like competitive with other people. And I'm like kind of envious of your
Track
ability
is so
to
individual.
to not. I know if
Makes
it feels
sense.
like it gave you that ability to disconnect more. Like I'm so I don't know what it is, but I wish that I wish more than anything that I didn't compare myself. And I every time I think I'm out of the pattern of it or the habit of it, I'll open up Twitter and I see another friend who's got hit Twitch partner. And it doesn't help that I do like educational getting started on Twitch type of content, because I get a lot of random people on my videos that will come in and say, well, she's not even a Twitch partner. She doesn't even have this amount of viewership. She doesn't even have this amount of followership. So everything she's saying is invalid, basically. And I have people, you know, it's just like haters, trolls, jerks, whatever, will come in and say stuff like that. But it because I'm insecure about that, it sticks with me and it hits me. And then when I log into Twitter and I see someone else who started streaming a year ago hit partner, I've been streaming for 5 years, I'm still not partner, but it's because I burn out so much and I drop my numbers down and I can't ever, you know, it's a whole it's very difficult for me. I don't know, I wish it wasn't, but it's
And that was like a big impetus behind my kind of social media break, because like, you know, like Confetti, you said, you know, when you see someone else succeeding, it doesn't take anything away from you. And like, I completely agree with that. But, you know, Shady, I kind of feel the same way as you in terms of like, if I see someone, like maybe someone who has been at this a shorter amount of time than I have, but they get more viewers, more followers, whatever, like I'm happy for them, but it does still make me question, well, why am I not seeing
it makes
that?
me feel,
you know?
what did I do wrong? What am I doing wrong? Why,
Exactly. Exactly. And I just have to strongly remind myself, like, everybody's experience is different, you know, first of all. And then second of all, if there's something that is upsetting to me to see, regardless of the reason, it's okay to not look at that. Like, as harsh as it sounds, I've had to mute friends on Twitter. I won't unfollow them, but I'll have to mute them and kind of take a break from seeing their postings for at least a couple months until I'm like in a better headspace. And then, you know, just because, and I'm like, you know, I'm still friends with them. I still want to support them, but I just know for my mental health, it's better if I just take a break from seeing their stuff pop up on my timeline, or if I just quit Twitter altogether for at least a little while.
Yeah.
I think that's better to mute them than to be on like the receiving end of somebody feeling that way, because that happened to me very recently when I got into the Stream Elements Creator Diversity Program for 2021.
I was on the way.
Thank you. I was very happy, but I couldn't be happy probably until this week, to be honest. And that happened the week of Thanksgiving, because of the negativity and the ugliness of social media and Twitter. Because I was like, oh my God, like, it's finally out. The announcement's out, because I knew a little bit beforehand, and I was like, okay, like this is really cool. I never knew how nasty things could get, and I was on the receiving end of, well, why didn't I get that? And it's just like, you know, somebody had made some people who are mutuals of mine who said, you know, why are accounts that have over 10,000 followers on Twitter getting this? And I was one of those three people really who had over that following. So it's like, it really hurts to be on the receiving end of that, because it's like, then I get petty. I'm like, well, where's your content? But then on the other end, it's like that really, like I could not be happy. I could not celebrate. Like I was posting tweets and stuff like that. Like, yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. But like on the receiving end, I was in tears. Aww. I was like bawling, because I was just like, I thought that, and I thought like, I mean, yeah, of course, I know people who don't get things are going to be upset. I've lost and I've gotten upset, and that's fully okay. But like I said, if my friend got that, I'm like, yo, that's dope. Or like if other people, congratulations. And it's just like, okay, back to making my content. But like being on the receiving end of like, why didn't I so publicly sucks. Yeah, and it went on for 2 weeks. And I'm like, oh my God.
And that's the other problem too, is like everything we do and say is like, can be used against us in a court of social media. Like,
yeah, that's why
I
just kind of dipped out.
You can't
and then I was also
publicly.
moving. So
yeah, like it's and it does suck because you can't be happy, you can't be excited. This is typically
my
why
drafts are lit though. That I will say that my drafts are pretty lit.
I think this is why I just kind of like dip out, though. It does suck to like not win or like not receive, because it is again the question of like, why was I not good enough? But on scenarios like that, like they had a billion people apply and they can only pick a small amount. I've also been on probably a lot of us have been on the other end of like, I'm asking for people to apply for a spot to come on for this. That like I want to have someone come on my stream to do this guest spot for this thing, and I have 10 people that ask, and I can only pick one. So I've been on the other end of like having to reject people, in other words, and how difficult it is for me to reject people, kind of thing. Yeah. It's a whole just The poor little fragile human ego makes everything so difficult, doesn't it?
Yeah.
This is a
That's real.
really weird industry. Like, no matter what way you look at it, like
It
we're
is.
constantly having to make these weird decisions and have these really strange interactions. And like, I really feel what you're saying, Confetti, about the whole like being on the actual receiving end of someone being angry or upset when you're just trying to celebrate something.
Yeah.
And like, you should have the space to celebrate. And it's like, the thing is, it's valid that that person's disappointed and that they're upset, but they don't need to be so public about it. And it doesn't need to be in your mentions, for example, because like, that's none of your business. It's none of their business.
And also,
like they need
and
to
the
take
brand
that somewhere
sees
else.
that
you know what I
too.
mean?
So you think they're gonna pick you now?
I was about to say,
right,
this is
it's not gonna
exactly why you're
work.
not getting picked. Okay, it's this toxic attitude. Like,
Maybe they saw something. I don't know.
Maybe.
But I think something that like brings me joy, honestly, it's when I see other streamers win. When especially like for Black women, that brings me so much happiness. Like I run a stream team called Sisters of the Fog, where we are a bunch of Black women and Black non-binary individuals, and we focus a lot on horror and also just representation and stuff. Overall, we do like consulting work and everything, and raise a lot of money for charity. But like a few of my people on my stream team, some partnered, some not, have been getting hit by Fairy Modmother, which is like really cool.
I love that.
Some
What
people
is Fairy
have hit
Modmother?
partner. Fairy Modmother is we don't know who they are, but they go around on Twitch and they just donate subs and bits
Aw.
in very high amounts.
That's very
Like they
sweet.
just swipe the debit card and they give that to the streamer. So yeah, it's just random, but like a few people on my team a few people have, you know, had great cosplays, or, you know, they've hosted events. They've done so many things. And I absolutely love that. They got out of bed that morning, you know, like it's like the small wins and also the large. I just absolutely, that brings me joy, especially just because I think surroundings, particularly like the Black community, we point it out a lot when we talk about like a lot of times our trauma is the only thing that people care about or engage with, especially like, so like a tweet about like somebody getting murdered versus like, hey, I'm going live, you know, or go check out my YouTube video, or, oh my God, like I just got a dog. The thing about the trauma will get more versus the thing that actually brings us joy. So like, I always like try to like, you know, amplify and like celebrating that, because I know a lot of times that's not the thing that gets pushed for us. Whether that's algorithmically or whether that's just people trying to show up and save face.
Mm-hmm. That's actually something I feel with this podcast in particular, I'd really like to see us hearing from people, like voices that we don't normally get to hear from. And not just for the fact that, you know, we don't normally get to hear from them, and it would be great to actually give them a platform to do that. But they're doing cool shit. And I think that deserves to be brought forward and that the world needs to hear about it. So that's something that I think the Boss Level podcast, we have like a really great opportunity to start doing that and highlighting that and actually doing something really cool that we just sadly don't see anywhere else, really.
Yeah. And also, please celebrate when people get dogs, because I like dogs on my team.
Gosh, true.
My friend Stream Dad just got a new dog, and I'm very happy about this dog.
I love that.
He's so cute.
So I guess that's like segues us into the next question really nicely. What are our goals with the podcast? What kind of content do we each want to feature and bring to Boss Level? I think that you go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think for me personally, I find myself circling around my own talking points of my mental health and destigmatizing more severe mental health. I know that we're already well on our way to normalizing anxiety and depression, but I think the bigger capital letter diagnoses and stuff also need some normalization and be like, it's like, yeah, I have like bipolar, for example. I didn't know what it was for the longest time growing up, and I wasn't diagnosed until like very recently, because I was terrified to have any type of diagnosis like that because of the negative connotations that go along with it. And I don't want to be that. And that's the same thing that happened to me growing up in the South and struggling with my sexuality. And I didn't come out of the closet to myself until I was in my mid-20s because I didn't want to be the only gay kid at school, kind of thing. And so of course I can't can't be. And that, so it's a lot of like destigmatizing, normalizing, making it other people see, you know, it can look any kind of way. You know, like a bipolar person doesn't look like one type of thing. A you know, pansexual person doesn't look one type of way. There's so many different ways that it can express, and it's okay for me to be like this. And also my struggles with weight and stuff like that. I've ballooned up and down. I grew up overweight, lost a lot of weight in my mid 20s, and have gained it all back recently. So just kind of like maybe normalizing like plus size or even different shapes of your body throughout different periods of your life. Like you don't always look the same, and sometimes you're a little bigger, sometimes you're a little smaller. It's a variety of ways, and it's okay also to like still dress in cute fashion even if you're overweight or anything like that. Like kind of that I'd like to overweight, plus size, body positivity kind of thing. Bring like a little bit of, and then of course I do like education. So like helping the smaller creators feel like they're just as valuable as the people with 1 million followers. And we're all just people sitting behind our computer screens at the end of the day. And it doesn't matter what your follower count is. Like it's a lot of like, you can do it, kid. Come on. It doesn't matter what you are, what you look like, you know, just a lot of like encouragement, I think, is what whatever I can do to help inspire other people who feel less than, or like they're not good enough, or like whatever their identity is makes them not worthy of being able to do it. I think that's a big focus for me.
I think that's fantastic. And I'll follow up with saying that primarily I feel like I'm here to learn, which I feel like I already have done so much of, like, because I feel like obviously the, you know, folks who brought us together and created this podcast concept thought that, you know, I had something to bring to the table and something to contribute to the discussion. But at the same time, I know that, like, even though we all have so many common threads, we have such different backgrounds and such different experiences. And I'm so eager to like learn from you three and, you know, any guests that we'll have on in the future, and just to hear their experiences. Because, you know, like I said, you know, what the whole boss level thing means to me is like kind of constantly leveling up your own experience. And, you know, I've been especially in the last like few months, I've been so into like personal growth and personal development. And so I, you know, even though there are a lot of topics that I feel I can like speak on, and I feel as though I'm like, you know, I don't think there's anything I'm an like so much more that I want to learn, and I already have done so even in just this episode. So I'm grateful to be here with you know, the three of you.
I agree. I think I definitely am going to approach this with a sponge mentality, just to absorb as much as possibly can. You know, because like I said, it's a lot about self-growth. But also I think with this podcast, I want to also highlight a lot of the things that like Black women are doing. Because I said in, you know, my previous answers, talking about like a lot of the things that get put to the forefront is our trauma. And we are so much more than our trauma, and we're pretty freaking dope individuals. So, you know, I want our happiness to shine, since a lot of what happens, you know, gets focused on is our trauma. And I want it to be more than that. I also, for me, being an asexual individual, I want to normalize the latter half of the LGBTQIA plus, because a lot of us get left out. The Ace Arrow club, we get left out, and it's just like, I don't know. I don't know about that. So that's one thing I also would like to focus on, but also just people in the industry just being a boss and just being trailblazers in the things that they do, whether that's in charity, whether that's in esports, whether, you know, that's just in, you know, I don't know, like simulation games. Like, I just want to celebrate like people's successes, and also hear about people's stories and growth, and, you know, what they hope to accomplish. And maybe, and not just like in the live streaming space, but also like the YouTube space, or, you know, people who do things professionally. I just want to absorb all the things and do all the things.
I know I kind of already talked on this before we segued onto this, but I also want to add that I'd really like to highlight the fact that I'm a really soft person. I know that you all mentioned this earlier, being like sensitive. I'm a really soft person. My feelings get hurt, and the internet hurts my feelings a lot. I still think there's space for people like me. I think there's space for
Yes.
all of us to. It's okay to be soft. It's okay to find things hurtful. You can still be a boss, even if you're a soft person. And I think that's something that I would really like to kind of explore a bit, I guess. And also, yeah, like all of you have kind of said, I really want to learn from everybody, be it from the other hosts, which we've already kind of done today a little bit, or the guests that we have on, just being able to kind of like absorb as much information as I can, because I feel like that helps us all to level up and to like grow as people and as content creators. And yeah, I'm really grateful to be here.
I feel like I should probably mention like the spiritual aspect of what I do too, because I like often like gloss over that, but I feel like I'll probably end up doing some episodes later in the series on this topic. I'm mostly a tarot streamer on my channel, and I do think that a big part of like I feel like in culture right now we're trying to balance out masculine, feminine. It's like very, very heavily weighted in the masculine era, and we're trying to bring more femininity. We're trying to balance that patriarchy or whatever, right? I feel like a big part of that is normalizing or bringing back into a natural spirituality, a spiritual presence with our everyday existence. And I was talking about this the other day, like to me that's just authenticity itself is spiritual. Like it's just being who you are in your moment. So I feel like probably like the more witchy content I do, like normalizing it, taking away the stigma of I know that whenever I've seen tarot readers hit the top, like they're on the big talk shows on Twitch, there's just spam of scam artist, it's fake, it's your fraud, and I feel like this goes in a lot too with like ASM artists and stuff. Anything that seems to be dominated by women is spun as bad, toxic, scam artist, ripping people off, swindling people out of money, and it's like, no, it's not. But I would love to, because we talked a bit about therapy, and I find when I'm doing tarot, it's a lot of just having deep conversations with people and helping them think about questions in ways that they hadn't been able to think about them before, and open their mind up to possibilities for how they could approach issues and get a little more in touch with their emotions and their sensitive side, because it's what it is. You're a sensitive person, so it's an empathic kind of thing. So normalizing that as well, normalizing talking about emotions, feeling emotions, expressing emotions is a big thing for me. It's okay to cry.
Feelings are very human. They're part of the human experience.
Yes.
But I'm so happy that you mentioned how, like, you know, people associate like those like tarot card, you know, scammers or whatever with like women, because like to kind of add on to your, you know, concept of spirituality and everything, people tend to think of astrology as like, oh, it's bullshit. And they're like, oh, are you one of those girls that's into astrology kind of thing? And it's like, oh, well, you go to church every Sunday.
And it's also like, yo,
What's the
okay,
difference?
give me your birth date and birth time and sit down with me for 30 minutes and I'll make you a believer. I guarantee it. Like,
Or it's like, was it cool like when the Greek philosophers who were studying all that were men?
Look,
was it just cool then?
You're
Or
checking your
is it just a
stock
problem
markets.
now?
I guarantee your billionaire men are checking the astrology forecast with their stock markets too. I guarantee it. Ask Elon Musk. I guarantee it. Like,
Somebody once told me something like trading stocks is just astrology for men.
literally, dude. Literally.
I'm using that.
Amazing.
Okay, so welcome back, everybody. I hope that you enjoyed your little break. I think that our next question is going to be around advice and stuff like that. So what is some of the best tips and advice that you've received from mentors along the way?
I will tell you what my favorite boss that I've worked with told me that has stuck with me. I think have all of you had experience with imposter syndrome?
Of course.
Oh, yes.
Right. Okay. So I've met somebody who didn't. So I just thought I would ask, because they were like, what's imposter syndrome? And when I explained it, they were like, you get that?
That's why
and I was like, okay, all right, superhero. What the hell? But I had a
Was
boss.
it a man you were talking to?
It was, in fact, a man I was talking to. Surprise.
Shocked.
I am.
I
Somehow
know
I
it's
guessed
very
that.
surprising. So my boss that I worked with when I was a project manager, I got into project management as like somehow apparently my entire career has been an accident. I don't know how I got into project management, but it happened.
Failing up.
Operation failed successfully. I ended up in project management, and I felt really like I didn't know what value I brought, and I constantly had this like imposter syndrome. They're all going to figure out that I'm an imposter. I don't know what I'm doing, whatever. And I went to him with this, and he was my lead, like the lead project manager for our team. at Riot Games. Frank, if you're listening, you're awesome. I literally came to him with this and was like, I have really bad imposter syndrome. I feel like I don't add value. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm really scared. And he was like, do you want to know a secret? And I said, okay, yeah, go for it. And he said, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing half the time. And like, this was a person I looked up to as being like this incredibly successful person who was really good at his job. And he said, the secret is like, imposter syndrome is not a measure of your success or your failure. You're not going to reach a bar at some point where you're successful enough that your confidence is caught up and just says to you, right, you're good now. Yeah. You're fine. You're always going to battle with that, but it doesn't mean that you're bad at your job. It doesn't mean that you're doing badly. That's your brain telling you that you are, but you're not. And that has stuck with me. And I still battle with imposter syndrome, but I keep trying to remind myself that, you know, I'm never going to get to a part where I'm just going to go, yep, okay, I'm good with it now. I'm fine. I'm never going to get to that point. That doesn't mean I'm a failure. And that was the biggest thing and the most impactful thing that anyone has ever said to me, because I still battle with it, and I'm always going to. I'm never going to be okay with it, but at least I know now that that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm doing badly.
That reminds me of a YouTube video I watched. I can't for the life of me remember the person. It's just one of the billions of videos I've watched along the way, but it was about perfectionism. Which is something I struggle deeply with. Nothing is ever good enough, so I won't ever produce anything. I have however many hundreds of gigabytes of video that has just been recorded and never done anything with because my hair wasn't right or my eyelash was crooked or, you know, whatever. Like, but the person said something like, instead of trying to do it to 100% of your capability, just do it to 70% and put it out and move on and do something else to 70%. So stop trying to hit 100% all the time, because you're never nothing will ever be what you're imagining it. It's also like the horror trope of I can show you a closed door and it's scarier than anything that I could actually show you. So whatever you imagine is always going to be better or more scary or more beautiful or more wonderful than whatever you can tangibly produce. You're never going to be able to match up to what's in your head. So just go ahead and just accept that it's not going to be perfect and put it out and move on and put it out and move on and continue to learn and grow and evolve, because at that point you're getting practice in and you're going to learn how to do it better every single time.
Mm-hmm. So that was literally what I was going to say.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Do you want me to go next while you think of something else?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I have more advice from my therapist.
Yay.
To bring.
Yes.
So one thing my therapist has really taught me is perspective. And I will give 2 examples to illustrate that. Many, many years ago, I had a job that I was only at for like 2 months. This company like created this position, hired me. And all along, I was kind of like, I don't know if I know what I'm doing, you know, and I thought it was just like imposter syndrome. And then like after I was there for like 2 months, they basically like eliminated that position and fired me. And I was like, man, like I felt really bad about myself. I thought, man, like I was right. I didn't know what I was doing. That's why they fired me. And then many years later, it finally dawned on me that, no, they didn't know what they were doing. They created the position and then 2 months later eliminated it and told me it was because they weren't getting what they wanted out of me. But here's the thing. They didn't know what they wanted. So I won't get into the details now, but they didn't know what they were doing. And that's why I got fired. And then another example, you know, that was one I'm proud of myself. I kind of found the lesson myself there. Another one that my therapist had to really help me with was a lot more recently. Basically, there was an opportunity I was in contention for and I didn't get it. And when the person who did get it was revealed, I felt like, again, I felt very rebuked. I felt like it was kind of a slap in the face because I felt like I was more qualified than this person. And my therapist basically told me, well, maybe you were. And that's why they hired this other person. Maybe they knew that this kind of position would be best for that person who could really grow into it and develop and learn. And you already had all the skills and then some that they were looking for. So they knew that you wouldn't be super satisfied and happy there and that you would eventually very quickly grow tired of it and move on and kind of graduate to something else. Whereas this person might stick around for many years with them. And then they don't have to go through the costly process of like hiring a new person and, you know, deciding on all that. So that was a big one for me because I kept, you know, as soon as I didn't get it, you know, of course, my pride was hurt, my ego was wounded, and I felt like, oh, I thought, you know, objectively I'm more experienced than this person, so I thought I deserved it. But, you know, really at the end, and then it instantly made me feel like, I guess I was wrong about that. I guess I'm terrible. I guess I should quit. I guess I'm bad at my job. I'm a terrible host. I'm a terrible whatever. But, you know, again, that perspective of, well, maybe you're too good for the position. And I know that's not necessarily the case, but it made me feel better in the moment. So it was what I,
It's
what I
definitely
needed to
that
hear.
like overqualified thing. I know that happens to a lot of like older people when they apply for jobs that they're like overqualified for, and they
Yeah.
can't afford to pay them for what their qualifications dictate and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they also want a younger person they can mold to. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And underpay.
Yep.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
That's the other thing.
Underpaying real. I think for me, one thing that my mentor, some advice. So I have two that came to mind right after. Aurelian, she is my mentor. So we have like these weekly or bi-weekly monthly sessions. She used to work at Twitch and now she works for Riot Games. But every mentor session that we go into spun from this one conversation where I was severely burnt out. And when I get burnt out, my emotion that I like go to is actually anger, because it's like anger at myself. Like, why can't I do more? Why am I so like, I'm mad at my body and my body is just tired, or I'm just mentally drained. And it's like, I'm just so, and the thing is, she picked up on that and she was just like, what have you done to refill your bucket? And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't own a bucket. But she was talking about like, what have I done to recharge myself and take care of myself so that I can be better to make content, which is essentially, not just for myself, but also so other people to engage with. And I was like, nothing. Like that particular day, I was like, I have just been giving and giving and giving and giving and giving. And it's like, I at the time I was like, I feel like nobody cares. Like I just have to keep going because, people only care when I'm sad or angry on Twitter or blah, blah, blah. So it's like, why would I need to take a break if nobody's ever going to care? She was like, I care. You should care about you too. So she was like, for this week, take off streaming and do something that fills your bucket. So I think I took her advice and, I felt substantially better because I needed a break. I needed to also do things that made me happy. So one thing I hadn't been doing was gaming offline, just playing things that I want to play online. Because every game that I own, I don't play for the consumption of others, because that does kind of take like a little bit, that takes energy from you. So like Dead by Daylight, I play a lot on stream. I don't play that on my off time. I'm usually playing Persona or some type of other game like off stream that I just really enjoy. I like to work out. I go for walks. I like to go to the bookstore. I like to go to the library and just smell, because books smell awesome.
Oh my God, yes.
They do.
It's like, what store can I go to get another Funko Pop? Like, even if I only find one. So those are things that I was just doing to recharge myself. And every mentor session that we go into, she starts with, so how did you recharge your bucket this week?
Aww.
So
like
something to bring me back to neutral. Because the thing is, it's like, and now I always have an answer because I always know to prioritize that. And then also, this is actually advice. He's not my mentor, but it was really cool to get to talk to him. Troy Baker, the voice actor. He's really awesome. If you don't know a lot of his work, he was Joel from Last of Us, Snowvilliers
cool.
from Friday. Not Friday. I said Friday. I was going to say Friday the 13th. No, Final Fantasy 13. It just happens to rhyme. And he does, like, his resume is vast, but we were in a session with him and he was talking about advice. And I think you kind of talked on this, like, just like the perspective of like, I deserve. And I think like one time I like got caught up in that. It's just like, well, because a cosplay of mine had failed. Like I did Todoroki and I put money into Todoroki. I traveled to find a photographer. I found a photographer. I'm like, it got 80 likes and I never ever went to Todoroki ever again. I was like, I'm never doing this. I did my hair, like my natural hair, like red and white. It was like that for months. It stained my scalp. I was like, that deserved more love than it is. And literally he was like, but 80 people liked it. And it was just silent. And I was like, it just like, it really just changed the perspective of just like getting out of your head to think like, oh, okay, so this thing goes viral and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, but still that meant something to somebody.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be this ginormous thing to be worth something. And it's like that work that went in to me. So now like I know that certain color hair, and when I put it in my hair, it stains my scalp. So how can I do protective things against that? Because that's something that never happened before. I was like, oh my God. So like through that thing, like even though, outwardly it didn't do what I did for like Cinderella or X, Y, and Z, there were still things that I could take from that experience, but it still meant something to somebody. It wasn't worthless as I just like wrote it off to be. So I think that was really awesome advice that that was given. And also it was like really cool because it was just from him. He's so cool.
That's really cool though. I feel like that gives like we lose perspective sometimes, and how can you not, right? I mean, social media,
it's a numbers
streaming,
game.
content creation,
We're just
it's
constantly
numbers.
So weird.
It's so hard when something doesn't do as well as you think it should, or as well as something else did. But it's so weird because what you've literally just said is such a simple piece of advice, but it can be so life changing. And I'm like, right, I'm going to remember that from now on. Again, I'm going to write notes and I'm just going to remember this. It's great.
I don't really have any mentors, but maybe they're not traditional mentors. Like there's something that my mom told me since I was a kid that I've never forgotten, and I'm sure she's heard it somewhere else. My mom is a very clever lady, but I'm sure she's heard this from somewhere else. But she's told me that everybody is traveling through life with a monkey on their shoulder. Everybody has their own little tiny little ching in its little beep 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 beep, like whatever those little symbols are, and it's just like loud. It's ripping at your hair. It's jumping all over the place. It's throwing food at you. Everybody has a little monkey on their shoulder, and everybody is always trying to get you to take their monkey from them and to take care of their monkey for them and to carry that monkey for them. And she has said to me ever since I was a child, not my monkey. That is not my monkey. That is your monkey. That is your monkey. Keep your monkey. I have my monkey. I have to deal with this myself. You deal with your monkey. And this is something that I definitely, the closer I become with other people in streaming or anything, like especially when I'm mentoring other people or I'm helping people and they have all of these things that they're overloading on me, or I get into DMs and there's just a bunch of drama that they're trying to shove off on my shoulders to deal with. I'm like, that's your monkey. That is your problem. That is all on you. That is not mine to deal with. I do not have space for this. I have to take care of I have my own monkey. I'm taking care of this. It's a nightmare. He's ripped out a chunk of my hair today and I got to figure out how to fix that. Like, no, I'm not. I cannot deal with it. And I think that's a big thing with boundary settings too, which has been a huge lesson for me in content creation. Saying no. Oh my God. I'm still so bad at it. Or blocking people, even, and especially people who might be long-term community members or even sometimes mods. I've had to ban a few mods from my channel because of the toxic levels that it would, because I haven't been able to put proper boundaries in place, and then they step over and step over and step over and step over. And eventually it has to be this whole situation and scenario. So not my monkey, not my problem is like my constant, I'm always cycling through that in my head.
Like it.
But yeah, so that's all of our best life advice and tips that we have, or some of our favorites at least. So we're going to challenge you, our listeners, to join us in the Discord and let us know the best advice that you've ever received. And we'll highlight our best tips that we receive in the next episode. So definitely join us in the Discord and share some of your thoughts. Maybe you can help us with some of the stuff we've talked about so far that we're still kind of struggling with. Imposter syndrome. Any help? Help me out, please. Okay, no, I don't know what to do.
Okay, bye. Peace out.
See you later.
So yeah, I guess a round table to do. I guess that's gonna wrap it up for the first episode of the Boss Level podcast, and we will exit by letting you know where you can find us all throughout social media. So, Psyche, would you like to let them know where they can find you and what you're up to?
Sure. So I'm Psyche. You can find me on twitch.tv/Psyche and pretty much all social media as Psyche Plays. I stream weekdays at noon GMT and I play Space Sandbox and story games. And I also have a blog that I never use at psycheplays.com that I would really like to start using throughout 2022. So I'm going to try, but don't hold me to it because I can't make any promises.
My Twitch is twitch.tv/Jess, and pretty much all my other social media is my first and last name, Jess Brohard, which is Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, really. But like I said, I'm kind of on my little hiatus. By the time this episode actually goes public, maybe I'll be back. But for now, tweet at me and I might ignore you. It's not your fault. Don't take it personally.
That's quite a marketing line.
I know. I'm sorry. Like, I might not see it, but if you want,
you're gonna get a bunch of ads like notice me. I am Milady Confetti. I am Milady Confetti on all socials. I have two YouTube channels. One is Milady Confetti, and the other is the Dystopian Nerd, where I talk about a lot of things in pop culture, anime, comic books, and all the things that interest me. So that is what that is. I made it very simple. We love branding, consistent everywhere. But you can find me mainly on Twitch 3 days a week, and then if I'm not there, I'm posting content on some other platform. So you can't get rid of me.
And I am Hey Shady Lady across all the different social medias, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, I suppose, but not really. But yeah, I would probably say most consistently, I don't know, between YouTube and Twitch at this point. I kind of fade and spark back in when I can, but yeah, I guess that's gonna wrap it up for all of us. And thank you all so much for listening. And we look forward to seeing you in our next episode. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.